Hey everybody, welcome back to another film of the week. We have not done one of these in a hot minute, and I literally just got done watching this, and I just want to be able to spill out my thoughts somewhere. So I figured just to bring this back, and I don't know if it'll be something that we do regularly, just because frankly I'm lazy. So sometimes I'll be in the mood to watch something, and then other times I won't. So, but today I decided to check this out because honestly, my mind's just been all over the place, and I just need something to just to focus on for a little bit, and definitely something that took some time. So I just got done with this, and I have some thoughts. So that film that we're going to be discussing for this film of the week is Eight and a Half, which was directed by Federico Fellini, who did some films here and there. I forget exactly what they are. I believe he's a notable name, especially within Italy. We're just going to pull up some of his films here. He did work such as, let's see here, nothing that I can exactly point to, I guess. I guess maybe I'm thinking of some different director. Yeah, I'm probably thinking of a different director, but this is Eight and a Half, and this was released in the 60s. And this is a story about a filmmaker who is attempting to make a film, and his film is rather mysterious because he is not willing to give out any specific information regarding what the film is about, who's going to star in it. There's a lot of pieces that are missing. And as the story unfolds, you see this person and ultimately how he's feeling on the inside, and ultimately how people take to that behavior on the outside, and deciphering what is true about what is being expressed, and ultimately the more appropriate path to take upon understanding that truth itself. And the way that it attacks its subject is, very technically, fascinating. There's many different angles. Lots of different film techniques. Lots of overlapping within the dialogue, a lot of experiments. Obviously, this is, I guess, would be considered avant-garde in terms of just how it attacks that expression, it being quite um, silent within the overall visualization. Even though there is, you can decipher obviously something to be there, because obviously if there is no literal explanation to the expression, then I wouldn't call it avant-garde as much as just visual mess. But in the vein of it, I guess that's how this would be labeled as. But I was interested to see this for a while, but I just never got around to sitting down and watching it. So I just decided just now just to give it a shot and to see how I feel about it. And I literally just got done watching it, so that's why I'm kind of all over the place with my thoughts. I literally just got done watching it like a minute ago. So um, the words that come to mind, I have some notes also, which I will be utilizing here. Um, but really, my thoughts on it are, I think it's rather fascinating. And there's a lot of things about it in terms of the overall depiction of the character that I found interesting. He's very lustful, he's very scattered, but he's also very observant, specifically on women. And I think that about the character himself, what is very clear to me about him is that he is a bit of a misogynist, and he values women in a very specific way. He's, very, I wouldn't say sexually charged, but he's motivated by a certain kind of physical characteristic, not necessarily about emotions, about wanting to be with somebody, valuing someone in a certain regard. And at the same time, he also is searching for something real. He is searching for something valuable and real. But the whole point of the story really is about that that blockage, the part of which that is preventing him from finding that thing that is real, and that is himself. And I think that really to its core, what the film is about, which I think is a rather interesting case in terms of how it paints this idea, is this idea of the relations between self reflection and self absorption. Because when the film started, I didn't know how to take it in terms of just its it's rather surface level, because I feel like a lot of what it was attacking in the first half was that idea of self-reflection, the idea of the inside looking at the outside, and that interior and looking at the exterior. And there's a sympathetic, layering that is attached to it, um, even though there is things there that also uh, is not cut and dry. The person that we meet, that we follow, our main character, he isn't exactly cut and dry. He's cheated, and he's also, again, still has this thing about women. But how he is looking at things personally, it does create that sympathetic view. To when we get to the second half, it is actually self absorption. It's about the opposite now happening, the exterior commenting on the inside, and actually providing us a more realistic view and perspective of what is truly this main character, which is a person who is self absorbed and has this brooding narcissism inside him, buried at the center of it. And I think that what you get ultimately as a piece is something that is rather intriguing, but the fault of it, I do believe, is that is the way that it ultimately lends itself in terms of time, because this is a 2.5 hour film, and I don't believe that it needed to be as long as it was. I think that it rather dragged itself out to where I think the weight of its ideas as it is felt, it just comes across more in the vein of self-indulgence and less so of a profound depiction of the idea itself about self, absorption and self-reflection and this narcissism, to which is ultimately about trying to find a way to that truth, to finding that real, uh, because as the character is looking back, he is looking back because it is a time of purity, it's a time of innocence, it's a time of true honesty to some extent, and he wants to be back to that place again, but he's so caught up in his own self that he fails to realize that himself is the ultimate barrier, until of course, as the film moves on, without spoiling it if anyone has not seen it, but it does end on a hopeful note, let's put it that way. And at least to which how I took it. And I just think that overall journey, by how long it chooses to play and how long things are allowed to express themselves, instead of creating more depth to some extent, to some extent until the second half registers and you realize what is taking place within that overall expression, it just comes across a little bit self-indulgent to me, and it doesn't feel like we're to some extent getting much more rudimentary, as much as we're circling around ideas that is, in my opinion, rather apparent. So, but still intriguing, and I think that visually it's quite fascinating, and I think that the visualizations do actually, create, or do provide an interesting illustration of self-expression, or self-absorption and self-reflection, and that narcissism in between. I really like that one scene where the dude is just, you know just imagining, because there's also a lot of interior, a lot of scenes that take place, on the inside, things that are happening inside his mind, things that happen outside. Sometimes they're dreams, sometimes they're not. And I like that, that all that stuff that's at play. And it doesn't feel as though that you're like lost in that place. It does feel as though that you're kind of able to register where you are at points of the story. Um, and I really like that one scene I was going to mention where it's him surrounded by all these ladies, and all these ladies that are at certain points of his life. And he's like, at some point, not able to recognize certain ladies because he has gotten so caught up in being that type of person that it's just now a regular thing to him. And it's just to him himself, even though really it's a flaw. It's something that is holding him back from being able to find the purity and that innocence and that honesty that he is seeking. So so there is a certain depth to the film that I greatly appreciate, but I do believe though that the weight of its time, the longer that it plays, it does feel as though that there is that sense of self indulgence that creeps in, and less so again of that hard hitting depiction of the idea itself. So so I think it's an interesting piece, and I like that again all the techniques up front. You know, the absurdities, because it is also it is meant to be not to be taken completely seriously. You know, there is a layering of humor that is apparent as well. You know, like that scene with all the ladies. It's like it's meant to be exaggerative. It's meant to be, uh, it's meant to be, humorous in its depiction, maybe darkly humorous to some extent. Um, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating, but I do think though it does lean into to that self indulgence a little too closely at some points, and because of that, it does feel as though that it is dragging itself out. Um, so I think that overall I did enjoy it, but I think that the the line of my interest started to wane a little bit because of how long it plays, and even though there is that layering that does eventually come to fruition, it feels as though that time itself is just an issue here, and less of it, and more of a condensed factor, more of it just it being like more like a 2 hour feature or something along those lines would have helped in my overall viewing of it. But still, as it stands, fascinating, intriguing, and um, definitely. Definitely interesting in terms of its overall structuring and how it chooses to deliver its how to handle itself within points of of its runtime. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on 8.5. I thought it was interesting, very unique and very intriguing. It reminded me of that film from Alejandro Inarritu, film called Bardo, which I really didn't like that film personally because I felt it was way more self indulgent. In this, that feeling is not as highlighted or as felt as did Bardo. Um, so thankfully, thankfully that wasn't the case here. But it just kind of reminded me of Bardo. I'm wondering if Bardo kind of was inspired by this to some extent. They kind of play off in very similar fashions, but you guys, know your thoughts on 8.5? If you guys have seen it, again, just my fresh thoughts. I literally just watched this, so I'm just kind of just going off the cuff, giving you guys my thoughts. Um, but you guys, know your thoughts on 8.5? If you guys checked it out, if you guys have not, check it out. It's interesting. A little long, but interesting. So you guys want to know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.